Here's my second part of the series with Dinesh Chawla. I hope you enjoy. What advice would you have for young entrepreneurs that maybe can't figure out where to start?
You don't have to know all the answers up front, but you should think out a lot of possibilities of failure. A saying I have, I don't know if I patented it or not, but one of the things I like to say, and I say it a lot to managers and people who are asking me for advice, is the surest path to failure is to only assume success. If you don't build in contingencies to your plan, it is doomed to failure. I know of nobody, Sam Walton, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, who had a straight line path to success. And I'm on a much smaller scale than any of those people. But in reading their life stories, or if you go to sports, Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, it's amazing the setbacks they dealt with and how they rebounded from the setbacks is amazing. But I'll give you an example. Tom Brady recently found his resume and a cover letter that he had written because when he was projected to go,
not first round.
He did not. Yeah. I think he was draft pick 199.
Yeah, fourth round or something like that.
I believe it was sixth.
Yeah, it might have been sixth.
It was sixth round. Yeah. So he dusted off his resume. He didn't dust it off. He brought it out, and he had a very nice, compelling cover letter and so forth. But he was already thinking contingency. He did this before he went to training camp because he knew what the success possibilities were. And I always, when I'm listening to people, they come up with a plan. This is how we're going to deal with this group booking, or this is how we're going to deal with this particular contract. I listen intently, and then I say, okay, what if this happens? And it's amazing to me how the plan unravels with just a couple of questions. And that's life. If you're not importing life's possibilities into anything you're doing, you're doomed to failure. So I never, when somebody says you're sitting on gold or it's going to be a home run or whatever,
that's never true.
Nervous. Yeah. And it also helps because when people are critical or condescending or dismissive of my ideas, I'm actually excited to hear why. Now, if they say it won't work because it's stupid, that's not constructive.
Right.
But if they say it won't work, right, because there's no demand for that, or from my experience, yada, yada,
so
yada.
what experience? Yeah, you want to know.
Exactly. I want to know those things, so I build that into my plan. If they say it's not going to work because of this, then how do I fix that problem to maybe convince them that it could work, or maybe convince myself that I've taken the proper steps to deal with that? So it's a built-in contingency. So, another thing I tell the managers, I guess a corollary of that is there's no such thing as a bad comment. When somebody is critical of you, if they're saying something, even if there's a kernel of truth to it, it's a springboard to action and solving whatever problem or deficit that they saw. So look at it as an opportunity rather as some kind of negative attribute to what you're trying to do.
I know so many business owners that are afraid of social media because they don't want to have a site where somebody can go on and make a negative comment. But I always give them this example. If you're in a restaurant and you heard somebody over your shoulder talking bad about your business, would you get up and go over there and talk to them about it? Or would you just let it happen? It's happening anyway, but you have the opportunity to one-on-one open a conversation with them and find out what the problem is, and it might be legitimate. You may actually have a legitimate problem that needs fixing.
There's lots of levels to what you just said. Number one, if somebody is having problems with their business, quite often what they'll do is they'll hire a business consultant. And the consultant will come in and look around, they'll do interviews and do all that stuff. All right, now in your business, you're in the restaurant business. If your consultant comes in and does this whole study, he can only eat so much of your food.
Right.
Okay. The guy who just had the steak that was undercooked could tell you that, and right away you could check your thermostats. You could check the way you're storing it, the way you're cooking it, how long it's being left out before it's taken from the service counter to the table. There's so many levels. You're getting this from the person who's the end user.
Almost real time.
Yes, exactly. And I call that free consulting.
That's exactly what it is.
There's no better consulting than your customers. If you listen to everything your customer says, I have the issue where when I was young, people would say these vitriolic statements to me about how bad my hotel was and so forth. and they would add the intolerant racist statements, because of my heritage. I would listen to them, but because I had that mindset then, I filtered all the stuff out and I focused on,
What was the real
the air
complaint?
conditioning didn't work. So if the air
Yeah.
conditioning worked, I zeroed in. And the great thing about what you're saying is the real time criticism. It gives you the opportunity to fix it before it becomes a hemorrhage to your business. So if I fix that air conditioner that same day, then over the next year, if that room is occupied 325 more times, I have a lot less potential to lose those 325 customers from
Then if you
something
didn't know about it.
exactly right, right. So
It's much worse not knowing, I think.
it is, and so you deal with the real time feedback, you respond to it. What you were talking about with the social media, you have to have a bit of a thick skin.
Yeah.
You cannot please everybody all the time, but you sure can try. There's a difference, and if you are trying, it's sort of like if my son says I made a 95 on my exam, and I said, "Did you study? How did you study? How did you do anything?" I'm happy with the 95 if he feels like he knocked himself out. If he made an 85 and he feels like he knocked himself out, well, maybe his ability or his interest in that subject was up to that. But if he says, "No, I could have skipped the movie the night before," that kind of thing, then there's an opportunity for improvement. So you have to look at the data that you're getting, the feedback you're getting, and make an assessment. Could I have been more diligent in my preparation for this guest? What could I have done? And you take those comments. They're not always intended to be very nice.
Right.
They can be very hurtful.
But they may have some truth somewhere in there.
That's what you have to do. You have to be mathematical about it. Take all the binary digital information, process it like that, and shelve the emotional content. Because in the long run, all you're doing is getting a blueprint for improvement by the end user. Dealing with these consultants or seeking advice from third parties, whatever they might be, there's no comparison to having the person who's actually using your product. In my case, a consultant can only sleep in so many beds.
Right.
We have over 1,000 hotel rooms in the Delta, so literally I get feedback potentially from 1,000 people a day. I mean, it's staggering. More than 250,000 people a year stay at our hotels.
That's amazing. In the Mississippi Delta.
In the Mississippi Delta.
That's crazy. 250,000 people.
250,000 people a year, and we were told. My dad was told for 3 years we didn't have the experience to open a 40-room hotel. So I not only read the feedback, I insist. I read every comment that's sent digitally because it's a requirement. Every hotel, that all the GMs read those comments and they give me a strategic report on how they could improve. So that data is not getting wasted and it's not getting old or useless. But I encourage them to share that data with their housekeepers, their maintenance people, their front desk people, their breakfast servers. I mean, they should know what the guests think of the property. And they have a stake in it too, because if the guests keep coming back, sometimes it's in response to you listening to their complaint. And
it means so much to a lot of guests when you respond.
Oh yeah, I mean,
just to know they're heard. I learned that from court when I have two people standing in there, and whether you're talking about civil court or criminal or whatever. Sometimes people know they're guilty, but they just want their side of the story heard.
Yeah.
And even when I then say, "I'm sorry, but I got to find you guilty," they feel okay about it because I listened to them. I gave them the opportunity to speak. And sometimes when they know they're being heard, even if you say, "Well, this was something totally out of my control," because sometimes it is. Sometimes it's nothing you can do to change situations.
Right, but the worst thing you can say in response to a guest complaining or wanting to know why something is done or can't be done is to say that's policy. But instead of reflexively saying, "No, that's policy,"
right,
you listen to what they're saying.
Give them an explanation why.
Not only give them an explanation, maybe consider that your policy sucks.
Right.
I mean, if it's causing a complaint, how many other people are having the same complaint? Is there a possibility? And that's why I tell the managers it's really important that when somebody's complaining at the front desk or in the breakfast area or to a housekeeper as they're walking the elevator, that employee should intercede, flag down the manager and say, "Hey, there's a recovery opportunity while they're on property."
If you can correct the problem on the spot,
yeah,
you may actually end up with a higher rating than you would if there wasn't a problem ever at all, because they see that you're you're managing and trying to, because
Especially if
service is
somebody
so
like,
much more important than
yeah,
anything
especially if
else.
somebody like you walks out. I actually had that experience at your restaurant in 1933. I don't know
Yeah.
if you remember the first time I went there. I felt like the catfish wasn't cooked properly, and it was like, I just met you, and we didn't really know each other.
I vaguely remember this, to be
Okay,
honest.
you rushed it away. They brought me something else and everything. It's like, wow, this guy, and the manner in which you did it, it really registered with me. So I don't look at it as that the catfish wasn't good. The catfish ended up being great, but the experience is what I remember the
Yeah.
most. And I was there on your last day.
Yeah.
I mean, it meant a
We were
lot to
just
me.
talking about that a little while ago.
Yeah,
Um,
and I sent a lot of people over there from the hotels.
I know you did.
And you think about it, we're talking about, I don't know what the catfish was, maybe about $18, an
Yeah.
$18 transaction. But the referral business I gave, if you said, well, it looks okay to me,
Yeah.
or, I'll give you 10%.
I didn't just lose the $18.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what
Exactly.
you don't know what that transaction really costs you in terms of bad publicity, indifference from other people. There's all kinds of things. And I think what's really bad is you become calcified in your responses. You start thinking people are out to get you. They're bums. They're just trying to.
How important are your employees? And how do you choose? The hardest thing for me is not only choosing the best employees, but knowing when to move somebody down the road. And I've come up with this kind of, to open the subject up, this philosophy that if you've got somebody working for you that really doesn't fit in the team, you're not just holding yourself back in the team and the business, but you're holding them back as well.
Yeah.
If you don't move them on, they may be very happy and do very well somewhere else. But how do you make those kind of decisions? That's one of the toughest things.
Yeah. I'm a
And
little.
you got a big staff. How large is your staff now?
About 400 people.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. Yeah. I'm a little bit more divorced from the day-to-day process than I used to be. Well, not a little bit. I'm a lot more. I've ceded a lot of those responsibilities because my development.
But you're still, even your senior people, you're still
Well,
in
I've
that
trained
somewhat.
them and given them parameters, and they're pretty religious about following a lot of those guidelines. So I'm happy with the way they're doing things. But what I used to do is I used to have a 5-minute closing interview. If two managers agreed on a person that was good for the company, I asked for them to refer them to me, and I did a 5-minute face-to-face closing interview with them. I wanted to see if there was anything that I had left to resolve there, and I just wanted to get a feel for who they were. Also, I wanted to let them know that you're being interviewed by the CEO of the company, and he thinks 5 minutes of his time is worth it at a minimum to spend with you and give them an opportunity to see the face of the company rather than just seeing my name on a check. I also used to do new employee orientation. I would spend 3.5 to 4.5 hours with all the new employees before their first day of work and tell them about what the philosophy of the company was, how far they could go, and it was just an engaging interaction with them once they got on board. And I would give them my email address and my personal cell phone number. So if they ever had any problems, they had direct access to me. They didn't have to feel like they were the low man on the totem pole. I used to know people's birthdays. I used to
Hard to remember 400 though, isn't
yeah,
it?
I used to know their kids. In fact, one of the best experiences I've had is having these ladies who worked for me for 15 to 20 years bring their kids into the workforce with me as well. I mean, that's really an impressive thing, I think, for our company.
That they trust you enough to
Yes.
want their kids to have a career with
Absolutely.
you.
Well, even as a stepping stone,
Yeah.
like a part-time job while
Sure.
you're in high school or college. And it's great. It makes you feel very flattered that your company is that much trusted. I mean, a mother's children are the most precious thing that she has. And if she's introducing them to you, that means something. And, so I had a really close bond with them. I still get together. I love when they win awards or they've worked on a project or they've made some kind of accomplishment. I love eating lunch with them. We do our luncheons together. It's very informal. Sometimes we have suppers, and of course you do the obligatory 5 to 10 minute speech. But it's my chance to really thank them on behalf of the company because they're the ones that make the company grow. and they're the cog of the engine. I always just tell people during orientation, one of the best things that you can get in your first couple of weeks with our organization is a write-up. Because when we deliver that write-up to you, what we're saying is, you did something wrong, we really care about the company, and we really care about you. Here's a mathematical process with how you can realign yourself. We're doing it in such a way it's not demeaning, it's not threatening, it's just a mathematical representation of how they could improve. And so they're getting a reassurance from us that there's a way to fix this, and we hope their behavior improves. Conversely, we get to see their reaction. If they crumple it up into a little ball and throw it
You
at
kind
our
of know where
face,
you're going.
yeah, we know that they're brittle and they're not interested in improving themselves. If you have some people that write you handwritten notes, I'm so sorry I made this mistake. It will never happen again. Thank you so much for being nice about it. I'm so embarrassed. It's like this passionate
Yeah.
plea, and it really says a lot or simply if they correct the behavior, that's the ultimate goal, then everybody feels good about it.
And a lot of that just attitude, what we're really talking about.
It is, and a lot of it comes from how they were raised. I think a lot of it is parental, church. And
Same kind of vein of thought, really.
Yeah, it is. It's their background. We want everybody to work out. There's multiple
Yeah.
reasons. One, it's hard to find stable people. It's a lot harder than it was 15, 20, 30 years ago when I started. I mean, over time, it's getting harder and harder. Second, you've invested money in their training and development, let alone their cost of their uniform. And you don't want to see that go poof up in smoke. And third, you kind of regret that you put them through all those filtering steps and they still made it
Right.
through. And now so you don't want to admit that you were that far off.
Exactly.
Yeah.